everybody. Thanks for joining us again today. I'm Casey.
And I'm Carrie. Nice to see you.
Today I'm going to be talking about just briefly some of the experiences that I've had as a demonologist. And I'm just talking about a couple personal things that has occurred to me around the property in which I live. As a demonologist, when you go into this world, when you undertake this life choice, is really what it is, you're accepting that you're going to be going through some experiences that are terrifying and nothing like you've ever seen before. And I'm sure every demonologist can probably vouch for this in their own way. One of the experiences that I really remember and that I have gone through here at my complex is being screamed at by a demon. For some of you Game of Thrones fans, you will probably understand this analogy, but if you remember how the White Walkers screamed in there, it's very, very, very similar to that. It's this very high-pitched, almost like a banshee type scream, and it pierces your ears and the inside of your head and even in your body in a way that I've never experienced before. When I first heard it, I jumped just because it was something that I'd never heard before, but I instantly knew by the vibration and the frequency of it that it was a demonic entity that was screaming at me to get my attention. You've heard that yourself before.
Yeah. They come in all sorts of varieties. Boys, that doesn't sound like a blanket statement, but when you're a demonologist, it is an active lifestyle, life choice that we're doing, and we're going to be under attack a lot of the time, but we don't just let that happen. It's part of the experience, but we have our ways to make sure that it stays to a minimum and doesn't have the greater effect that it could. So these experiences that he's sharing, it's really cool to get that kind of coffee time feel. Although we don't really drink a lot of coffee. And have Casey check in with some experiences that he's had over the last, several months.
Yeah. So another experience was the smell of a demon. I've smelt this in my apartment, but where I get this smell more likely or most frequently is in the inside of my truck when I'm driving. And it is an unmistakable smell. It has this smell of shit, of rotting flesh and decay. One of the things that I really remember that continues to resonate with me from my experience in Iraq is the smell of burnt flesh.
Yeah, that's not something everybody gets to experience, know what that smells like firsthand.
No. And it just smells like death. So picture every possible funky, disgusting smell that you can think of and magnify that by about 1,000. That's pretty much what you get for your smell. I like to try and project that and use it as an intimidation factor and try and freak you out.
Yeah, and that smell, it hasn't come from in here recently. That was before the clearing and moving through into a safe place within the house here, but the smells, that was the other day inside of the truck. We don't get demonic activity within the house though anymore. That's something that's cleared all the way, but boy do they like to show themselves outside.
Yeah. Well, I did get a metaphysical smell from it when I was doing battle in here one night with one of the entities with one of the demonic entities that was outside on my grounds.
Right.
And even though I know that it was not in my apartment, they can still manifest that smell.
Right.
Where you're not actually smelling it, but you're getting the smell from inside your brain, more or less. If that makes sense, it can be kind of confusing to explain. But
yeah, that's it. That's one of those. It's telepathically imprinting scent upon your mind, triggering your senses into having that as a first-hand scent because those sensors are activated.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. There's also been physical attacks that I've been subjected to. I've been pushed both from on the back and then on my neck as well. I've been bitten on my arm, and even though there's nothing there physically, you sure do feel that. And then one of their favorite things that they like to try and do when I'm outside is this kind of smothering tactic that they like to do. They like to rush up on you and then get in your personal space and then essentially try and cover you like a giant blanket from the top of your head onto your back all the way down. And it's like being encompassed in this cocoon of this really yucky energy, and it's essentially trying to kind of squeeze you and suffocate you in a degree with the amount of force that it's projecting. It takes some breaking out of that.
That was a couple weeks ago, too, when you were, I know it's happened multiple times, but the one that I'm feeling that you're talking about specifically was a few weeks ago when you were rushed by that entity, and that was just before going into astral realm battle.
Yeah.
With those guys, what did you do to get it off of you?
Well, what I did is that I imagined myself from the inside and then working its way out, that this is that essential meditation protections that we've talked about, but I've imagined that light and that love on the inside and then building it up and then slowly pushing it out of my body and further away from my zone, and essentially using that as like a giant muscle and breaking the lock of the demonic entity and forcing it off my back and off my neck, where they like to try and push down on pressure down on the neck and the shoulder areas.
Yeah, you just force that light out and use that as a shield, and that essentially started that battle for that evening too.
Mm-hmm. In addition to the physical attacks, I've also physically seen them, and this is something that can be truly terrifying when you first see it. Talked about it in that same demonic roommate video about the one that was in my apartment here, but also seeing them out on the grounds. Mm-hmm. They like to try and hide around out there and move around out there, and they'll duck between bushes and duck between cars, and also seeing the glowing eyes.
Right.
The glowing eyes of a demon, I tell you. I've also seen it in its true form. And when I'm talking about this, when I say its true form, I'm talking about that ugly creature that you typically might think of, or that you perhaps have seen pictures of, in some kind of book or something like that. And what I saw was a tall black figure that its skin was all black and everything on it was black. It had these long, kind of spiny, spider-like legs and these long, slender, skinny, spidery-like arms.
Yeah, and the texture of it, it's not a human texture. We don't have that kind of a darkness in this human realm. That's not a skin that any type of a human or anything like that can ever possess. It's a very specific type of that darkness that happens on the actual textures of the skin.
It's almost kind of reptilian, if I had to describe it. It kind of what you think of like a reptilian.
Right. And there's so many different types of demons and devils, and where those specific demons, what legions are they from, what devil is their head source, what purpose assignments do they have within that reign with that specific devil. So there's the ones that he's talking about seeing is the true form of this specific demon that was appearing that wasn't just in its preliminary shadow figure state.
Yes. It had this long, elongated type head with a long, pointy kind of chin to it, and had these horns that protruded up from the top of the skull, and had these long fangs, these black, long, shiny kind of fangs to them. It was disgusting looking. It really was. It was vile and disgusting looking. So I've talked a little bit earlier about the glowing eyes, and it's not like seeing animal eyes. These are different. I've seen these eyes in color red, color yellow, and this really off, disgusting white kind of look to it.
Yeah.
Even having my shades drawn all the way, so I know I'm not seeing any light coming from my neighbor's patios or anything like that. All that light has been blocked out, but still seeing the eyes through the covered screen that I have on my window here, or seeing them outside behind a bush, or frankly just standing straight up staring at me, trying to intimidate me and scare me. I've had one experience when there was a portal open outside on the grounds that I had one set of eyes originally staring at me, and then that became two sets of eyes.
Right.
And then it became three sets of eyes. And then it would mold back into one, and it just kind of would go back and forth between one set of eyes and then three set of eyes, just, to try and scare.
It's at that point it's showing its shape-shifting abilities too, and a lot of demonic, they are able to shape-shift. So sometimes when you're thinking that you're experiencing just one demon, it's not necessarily. Sometimes people will experience entities that seem like there's three beings within that house of low vibration. And upon really examining and looking into the situation, most often it's actually the one demon that has shape-shifted into the three, or it'll take a separate entity that is not of that demon, piggyback it, and make it into three separate beings altogether. So that's something that those things like to demonstrate their craftiness on shape-shifting too, to add confusion and make you wonder how powerful it is, and try to intimidate you and stand its grounds for its, to demonstrate its power.
One thing I've learned is that I don't let them intimidate me. I don't fall for their tactics of what they do. I'm not stupid enough to go and challenge one.
No.
And, try and come off all high and mighty and, all that. But I will stand my ground, and I will look back, and I will exude the power of love and light. Mm-hmm. The things that are pure love and light. And so that's my way of standing up to it and letting it know that I understand your tactics. I understand that you're trying to scare me. I'm not going to let that happen. This is what I'm doing. So you can stand your ground without invoking more rage, and without actually challenging them to do something to test or prove their powers.
Right.
Never do that. Never do that.
Never challenge.
Never challenge. Stand your ground, but don't challenge.
It's something with what you do as far as putting the love and light out there. As a demonologist, you're going into, when this happens, you're going into astral realm, and he has his own set of techniques that his guides work with him as well. When these entities show up, these demonic entities, they don't get to stay, they don't get to hang out. Casey is on the scene there and literally will go into astral realm with his guides and in battle. For this, there's very specific techniques that are used. There's very specific actions and ways to counter that attack that we don't suggest that people just start doing this. But as a trained, seasoned demonologist, it's more than appropriate to do this because you know what you're doing in astral realm. It's, as Casey's experiencing it, it's not that it just stays around or that things haven't been cleared, or it's not like that at all. This is going to happen as a demonologist. Usually it's precursors to what's to come, upcoming cases, things like that. But, again, we've said this before, it's worth doing what we're doing too, because we are also trained in this field as far as techniques of battle in astral realm. We're not doing this by ourselves, but it's for the part. These things don't get to have dominion. They don't get to have a claim. They will try their very best, though, to intimidate, and they will show themselves quite frequently.
Yep.
That's not going to go away.
Yeah, and I certainly don't stand idly by and just let them get away with that and do that kind of thing. I will go into astral realm and I will start throwing some major fireballs and rays of light, and I will evict them.
Sound
from the grounds.
frequencies.
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of techniques and strategy that happens within astral realm in combat. This is actual combat here. So that's something that, don't just go and do that. But as a seasoned demonologist, this is going to happen. When we're together, it'll happen, but it also happens to us separately.
Briefly just talked about or mentioned that they like to rush up. Well, that is what a lot of us might refer to as bum rushing or something like that. And what these entities like to do is, like when I'm outside smoking or something like that, they will get a running start from wherever they are hiding or from whatever portal they're in, and they'll get a running start and run as fast as they can or project themselves as fast as they can, and they do it right up to the point right before they make physical contact. So imagine running full speed and then all of a sudden stopping on a dime before you impact a hard wall. Well, that's kind of what this is like as well. They'll rush up on you, try and scare you, and then they'll stop right before they hit your personal space. And it could be a couple inches, it could be a couple of feet, or it could be millimeters away from you. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that they like to try and do. I've had an experience with one that did that same kind of tactic as I was coming up from smoking, and as I got to my front door and was opening it and then turning to go inside, I heard the entity rush up the stairs, across footsteps and all, and up to the platform, and right as I was closing the door, it made contact right there and just stopped right at the edge of my door. And as I locked the door, the handle began to jiggle a little bit.
Yeah, it's trying to mess with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be a little bit fearful at the time, but we talked about this in other segments of ways to shut that down. You can't let fear take a hold. You have to immediately take ownership in that and mirror light and love. You have to be the direct antidote to whatever that demonic is throwing out. And that takes a lot of technique and practice and time.
Yes. And I certainly wasn't going to take that idly by, so I got into that was a major battle that night. From that demon that was trying to display dominance or to try and display intimidation over me and to me. And that ended up being a pretty big battle that I got into that night.
Yeah, I did that when we had a lot of readings, like, working full time. I knew that was going on over here at that time. I was at my house with my kids when that had happened, and I was able to get into astral realm battle for a little bit, but the demonic at that time knew how worn down I was just by life circumstances at that time, and really took advantage of of us not being together and jumped all over him. With that was quite an intense night. That's where all of your guides jumped in, and Deborah was on spot, and so was Agnes, and they were literally fighting an astral realm with Casey to get rid of these and keep the house safe.
I had Archangel Michael with me that night as well.
Right.
I had a whole bunch of very loving, powerful entities that were in my corner that night that were helping me do battle with this demon.
Right.
Which kind of brings me up to one of the more scarier things that I've experienced here in my complex. And that is actually coming face to face with a very, very powerful devil. I'm not going to mention this devil's name, but he is in the supreme hierarchy of the devils and the demonic. And this devil decided to manifest itself right outside my patio, and my patio is facing some wetlands that are right outside there. So this thing manifested itself, and it had to have been, I don't even know how tall it was. It felt like it was this.
And it was wide too.
Yeah, I mean, it was this tall, wide, massive devil that was standing out there.
Dense, very dense too. The level of this entity you could feel was, if you were going to scale demonic from 0 to 4, it would be a 4. The density, the frequency, everything completely lines up with that specific frequency. By the way, we hope you never have to experience what those frequencies are. We're just talking about...
Just talking some few personal experiences.
Yeah.
Little coffee talk. For real, just a little, coffee talk.
But this thing manifested itself right off my patio, and this thing was grabbing trees and branches and it was shaking them, it was rushing around.
There wasn't any wind going on. It was a completely still night.
Yeah.
So it's not like there was a rush of wind that was making that happen. There wasn't any type of wind or movement whatsoever outside.
No.
At that evening whatsoever. No rain. It was completely strange enough for this part of Oregon, a completely clear night. So
can't chalk it off to the weather because
No.
there was none that night.
no.
But this thing was rattling trees, it was rattling branches, it was rushing and rumbling through the bushes that were down there, and this thing would kind of take a few steps back and then rush up to the patio, and then it would kind of take a few steps off to the side, off to the other side, back up a little bit, do it again. So I got into this battle with this devil, and I needed help that night. It was not something that I could do by myself.
Yeah, no.
And when I realized that, that's when I knew that I was dealing with something incredibly powerful that I had not experienced before, and it was a little scary.
It was a long night.
Yeah, that was a long night. It was a long battle, and it was a little scary. I called her asking for help because I knew that I was not as prepared at the moment, or I didn't have a very good chance of success
On your own.
on my own at that particular time.
And I will do astral realm battle from a distance for people for specific situations. Obviously, this is my love. So, of course, when this is happening for him, even if I'm apart from him, I know that it's happening. Because he is my twin flame, what happens to him happens to me as well.
And vice versa.
Yeah, that goes without fail. So when this is happening, I know that he needs my help. And so jumping into astral realm in that specific type of battle, it's a big deal. That's not something you just kind of idly do or think that you have skills to do and jump in and do. You really need to be quite experienced, I need to say. Plus, you really need to understand tactics and all of the bio of that specific entity, what its weaknesses are, what its strengths are, why it does what it does, and have that all boiled down. Because otherwise, in astral realm, even with all the guides there, yes, they will absolutely protect you, but there's still tactics that they use as well. So with that and working with us individually, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to go and do that remotely, but absolutely it will have done. No problem. We do that for each other all the time.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has just been a few experiences of a demonologist.
Just a couple personal little stories, tidbits to share with you folks.
I hope you enjoyed this segment. I hope you found it useful, and if you have some similar experiences or can relate to what I'm talking about, please leave some comments. We'd love to know. We'd love to hear about them.
Mm-hmm.
We really appreciate, if you went down below and hit the subscribe and gave us some likes and all that good stuff if you enjoy our content. Other than that, folks, we will be seeing you soon, and take care, everybody. Love and light.
Love and light.